everyone. This is Tell the Truth Sports Radio. I'm your host, Ron Fitch, and I promise to tell you the truth about the upcoming college football season. And so far, we had an upset and we had a somewhat predictable outcome in college football. The Ohio State Buckeyes took care of business and they beat Minnesota 45-31. Their defense was meh. Yeah, their offense is explosive, but you're going against Minnesota's a well-coached, average as far as talent football team. Ohio State was goofing around with them for a while, down 4 at the half, and then they went off in the second half, scoring 35 points, and they got going. Olive is a terrific receiver, Chris Olive, and he put on a show. 4 receptions for 117 yards. He was amazing. Williams ran the ball well, and Stroud was solid. He was not so great in the first half. Second half, he was solid. I don't have a problem with Ohio State as far as the Big Ten. They're going to run through the Big Ten like a laxative. Maybe Penn State will give them a game. I like Penn State. I think they're going to beat Wisconsin this weekend with their new quick pace that Coach Franklin's going to import. But the problem with Ohio State when they run, now they blew out Clemson, last year, but usually when they run to Clemson or they run into a team that is the same athletically, same speed, a little more tenacity, especially the SEC teams, they get beat up because they're not ready, because they're not as battle tested. To me, they should always schedule maybe an SEC team in the first game and go there and play maybe Auburn, go to Auburn or play LSU or go to the Swamp in Florida. Win or lose, that will give you set you up, or have the series of Oklahoma again. That will give you more of a battle-tested feel. The Big Ten is just, they're good. The Big Ten's good all around. It's not great. You don't have them dogs like you got with Florida and Georgia and Alabama. And in the Big 12, you got Oklahoma, who's really going to be good. And they don't have those teams to run into. You have good teams, but you don't have that potential great team. So when you run to a great team, they get punched in the face. Anyway, Alabama versus Miami. No, wait, let me get to the upset of the day because that game just ended. North Carolina got beat by Virginia Tech 17-10, and Virginia Tech dominated. It was 17-10, but Virginia Tech dominated North Carolina. You look at the time of possession. Burmeister was good. He had a touchdown. Could have had 2 touchdowns. It could have been they had missed a couple opportunities. They could have really blew Carolina out. Howell was pedestrian. 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. They didn't run the ball well. They didn't do anything. They were hanging in the game because Virginia Tech made a couple of mistakes. They were bad. It didn't look like the number 10 team in the country at all. Now let's get to Alabama and Miami. Miami has a puncher's chance in this game from the standpoint of De'Ara King going off. They have a quicker pace. Alabama's got a great but young defense. Very good. Willie Anderson and Chris Harris manning the middle. They're just really stout. They got size. They got everything. It's just experience. And Miami has to play from the lead all the way through to put the extra pressure on Bryce Young, sophomore quarterback, getting his first true start. And the returning starters that Miami have to have an influence. I just think somehow, some way, Alabama wins a game that's going to be, I think it's going to be close because of the experience. JoJo Earl is the next superstar wide receiver for Alabama. Watch out for him. That's the next guy. So you watch him when it comes to being a star and all the Heisman talk and all that good stuff. But he's coming, and they got a good running game. They got they're just talented. They reloaded all around. Miami has experience. Alabama's a talent. It's going to be interesting. Miami's got to make Alabama take extra snaps on defense. So they got to have this quick pace offense, stay on the field. It can't be 3 and out with a quick pace offense. Alabama bludgeons you to death or they'll get slaughtered. So the game has to go. If you see the game going a certain way where Miami's got the ball and they're running pace and Alabama's a little tired, that's Miami's door to winning. If that doesn't happen, Alabama's going to win because Alabama has better talent. Clemson, Georgia. Clemson, I would have given Georgia the edge, but Georgia is missing 4 starters. JT Daniels versus DJ Ayungale. And I like him. I like DJ to be a little better. I like JT Daniels to ball a little bit now. Got a full year's experience, but DJ is special. And now Clemson's coming off a beat down from Ohio State in the playoffs. So Coach Venables on defense was humiliated. So he's going to be very motivated. And Clemson has more to lose than Georgia because of the fact that Georgia could lose and they run the table in the SEC and win the East and then win against Alabama or whoever comes out of the West, Texas A&M. I will think it's Alabama, but Texas A&M was really good. You will see Georgia in the Final Four. Clemson's path has been shortened if they lose because now Carolina lost. Now you got to hope that Miami wins against Alabama. And if that doesn't happen, now what you got to do is hope that Virginia Tech beats West Virginia, beats Notre Dame, wins at Georgia Tech, wins at Miami, and then wins at Virginia and gets in the finals undefeated. That's what you got to hope. You got to hope that there's a team that's so dominant that one loss won't mean anything. That one early season loss won't mean anything if you can win your games and then beat up on Virginia Tech because of how good Virginia Tech's defense looked. But I don't know. Virginia Tech looked pretty good. They didn't look great. It's just Carolina was so bad. So we're going to have Tell the Truth sports radio correspondent Chris Stanley on soon. I do want to talk about in this last part of the segment about I'm glad that the players are making money off their own likeness. I love it. It eliminates the middleman. It eliminates all the it's not going to eliminate all the corruption, but now players can make their own money. The star players like Bryce Young can make $1 million. Now they got enough money. If they make $100,000, they got enough money to pay for their parents to fly in and fly out, first class, hotel. They could stay with them if they want. They could have, if they make $1 million, you could buy your parents a temporary home in the state that you're playing in. So there's so many good options. You can get your own food. You ain't got to worry about those archaic NCAA rules. I love it. And if you're the last man on the bench, you could link up with the star player, market him. You get a cut of what he makes. Now you are set up. So if you don't make it to the NFL, you have financial freedom to make it on your own. That's what I love about the setup here. And the alliance they're talking about is stupid. And then I want to talk about Texas and Oklahoma leaving to go to the SEC to make the SEC even better than it already is. It's so much more dominant than every other conference. And then I'm not going to call it the Big 12, the Little 12 will get Cincinnati and all the other teams and Central Florida, who are pretty good teams in their own, but not Oklahoma and Texas, not the cachet of those teams. I'm going to call them the Little 12 until they get their act together.
All right.
Okay, I have to tell everybody, I have my guest here, Chris Stanley, the Tell the Truth sports radio correspondent. And my niece was saying, Uncle Ron, I can't go without my training wheels when I ride my bike. I can't do a college report without you. You're kind of like my training wheels. So I was like, I got to get Chris before the start of the season because I feel better after I do the segment. What the heck happened in North Carolina tonight? What was that, man?
Ah,
Yeah.
I have no answers for what Sam Howell looked like. I mean,
Golly.
every year he's played, he has ascended better and better as a passer.
Yeah.
And this is the first time since he started playing for North Carolina that it looked like he's regressed. I mean, he's had
Yeah.
moments, but nothing like, especially against Virginia Tech. I mean, the consensus on Virginia Tech is that Justin Fuente and that entire staff is on life support. I actually have it
Golly.
on, I have it on good word that the staff at Old Dominion has been eyeing at that job because Virginia Tech is that much on the skids, and all of that just goes totally up in the air. Sam Howell's a Heisman guy. No, Virginia Tech on the skids. Maybe still, but beating the number 10 team in the country will help that. So there's your first major surprise. We're not even to Saturday yet.
Yeah, and before we get into the importance of Clemson's beating Georgia, I want to talk about Miami and Alabama. Miami's path is their pace with King and the amount of snaps that they inflict on Alabama if they can. That's what I believe their path is in their experience. Alabama, I believe, is just better because of how much talent they brought in. Their defense, they're saying their defense is the best they've ever had. So what do you think about this game?
I love De'Aaron King. Don't get me wrong. I mean, even
Mm-hmm.
coming off an injury, I think he's going to have a great season. Um, I don't see a path for Miami to beat them. I mean, you would have to, like you said, control the ball or just go score for score with Alabama because Alabama is going to get the points. I mean, they're
Yeah.
this is not, for your listeners, this is not Trent Richardson, Mark Ingram. We're going to pound you, Alabama. Alabama is now an aired out, mesh concept, smash concept passing team. And for Miami, they had so many good defenders, specifically pass rushers, walk out the door for the NFL last year, and
Mm-hmm.
they're not in a place like Alabama where you can just replace those guys with people who are just as good. Their defense is going to be vulnerable, and if they can't get to Bryce Young, Alabama's going to do whatever they want to offensively tomorrow. And if Miami can't keep up with them offensively, there's just not an avenue. I don't see one.
Wow, that's deep. Now, what about Clemson, South Carolina? Say, for instance, Clemson loses. How is their path to get to the national championship? They would literally have to get on their knees and pray that Virginia Tech run the table, and then they beat them in the final, which I don't see happening. But that's it. Because of Carolina losing, I thought if Carolina won, they would be okay even if they lost because they got Carolina there sitting there, but now they don't.
So, I mean, even if Clemson loses to Georgia, which I think is a possibility, by the way, I
Yes.
think Georgia's very good this year. There's just nobody else on Clemson's schedule that can go tit for tat with them. I mean, I I am curious to see how Florida State's going to look this weekend
Me too.
because they really are the only team on their schedule that's going to give them any sort of look that's close to Georgia. Again, they could come out this weekend and look totally listless, and I look wrong. But I mean, Mackenzie Milton is a legitimate piece. I know he's coming back off of basically having his leg rebuilt. But when
Yeah.
he was at UCF, he was as good of a quarterback as there was in the country. If he can get even to 80% of what he was when he was at UCF, I think Florida State can do stuff. But outside of FSU, there's nobody else on Clemson's schedule that can even come knee high to what they have talent wise. So even if they lose to Georgia, they can still run the table, win the ACC, and find themselves in the playoff.
But see, I have them beating Georgia because Georgia's missing 4 starters. DJ Awi Angole, I believe he's going to be a little. I did that. I think he's going to be a little better than JT Daniels. I think they're going to both have their moments. I think he's going to make it happen. Venerables is going to have a chip on his shoulder at that beatdown Ohio State gave him last year. I just think they're going to squeak by. It's going to be the best game of the day. I just think he's going to find a way. He's got that it factor that I really do like about him.
Yeah, DJ, I mean, we were really going off of one game against Notre Dame last year, but he looked real Notre Dame. And what kind of concerns me about Clemson is they're missing a couple of key pieces too, specifically Justin
Okay.
Ross.
Not having Justin Ross is going to be a big, big deal for them. Because he's the kind of guy that, if DJ's in trouble, he can just bail him out purely on athleticism. And George is pretty stacked on defense. I mean, I like the line. Clemson 3.5, I think, is a fair line, but I can see Georgia being able to establish a run game and control the clock and keep Clemson's defense on the field for a while, and that potentially being the thing that turns it. But you're absolutely right, man. If you're just going off of who has the best quarterback in that game, it's definitely DJ.
Definitely. Now, I want to tell you something. I don't know if you've ever been there covering South Carolina. On my bucket list, I think there might be a little technical difficulty because he's in the car. But I just want to tell you, on my bucket list is to travel to College Station to Texas A&M. When Texas A&M and Alabama plays, I am. So if Alabama takes care of business against Miami, I'm so looking forward to that game when they play in College Station to see what the improvements that A&M made.
Yeah, Texas A&M is, well, I should say Alabama, I believe, is Texas A&M's only ranked opponent. So I think a lot of people are circling that game because Texas A&M is coming into the season with, I think, the most hype around them since Manziel's post-Heisman season.
Yes.
And again, I don't think A&M is going to have the horses to run with Alabama whenever they finally match up. But there is this very weird possibility that if A&M runs the table outside of their game with Alabama and they don't get in the SEC championship game and, you have other teams with multiple losses, I think there's an avenue for A&M to make the playoffs.
Absolutely.
I know it sounds insane.
Absolutely, especially with
there.
Carolina losing. Absolutely. If they bump Clemson out and Clemson gets beat by Georgia and Alabama beats Georgia in the finals and Texas A&M does what they're supposed to do, it is definitely a possibility for A&M to get in. Even vice versa, maybe with Alabama, if they get beat on the road and A&M goes to the finals and Alabama sitting there, they might get in just the way it's set up. What do you like, Florida or LSU? What do you think about those teams?
I like Florida. I think they bring back a lot of good stuff. I really like their quarterback. He's kind of been sitting behind Kyle Trask for the past couple of years, but he is the kind of quarterback that Dan Mullen likes, the kind that he can run around with, do a lot of zone read stuff in the run game. I think Florida is going to be just fine. LSU, on the other hand, is a really tricky question because they look bad last year.
You sound concerned about tomorrow versus UCLA.
I am. I'm concerned. I'm concerned. I mean, granted, I wouldn't take anything. I wouldn't take a whole lot away from that win against Hawaii. But UCLA did look good. I mean, they looked like they knew what they were doing. They had the crap together. LSU did not have their crap together last year, and they still have questions at quarterback. Like I don't really trust what they're throwing out there.
Me neither.
Their skill position guys are not what they've been in the past. I mean, you see what Justin Jefferson did in the NFL the past year.
Yeah.
There aren't any of him running around there. LSU has a lot of questions right now. I don't feel comfortable about them coming into the season.
Now, you're saying that because usually it's LSU and Alabama when it comes to recruits and superstars. Has it changed and been a paradigm shift where it's more like Alabama and A&M now? And A&M's taking some of LSU's guys? What's going on there?
I think it's too soon to tell that, but I do think that is an interesting theory because Texas A&M and LSU both recruit Houston very heavily. And
Houston's big.
Houston is, I mean, it's probably one of the top 5 high school football recruiting beds. And LSU's been able to, get a lot of good guys out of Houston. But now the Jimbo's at A&M, if you go look at A&M's recruiting rankings, they're pulling a lot of kids out of that Houston area. And LSU's always going to have, the New Orleans Parish and Baton Rouge and all of the, the Louisiana places. But they've gotten a lot of good guys out of Texas. And if A&M can wall out Houston, I think that is a really interesting thing to watch the next 2 or 3 years to see if that talent paradigm shifts more towards A&M and away from LSU.
Now, what about Texas? Isn't Texas the most richest college in Texas? How come Texas can't get LSU and Alabama? How come all these Texas kids aren't going to Texas?
Because the people who run the show at Texas are nincompoops, for the lack of a better word. I mean, seriously though, the donor base, the board that runs Texas is famously meddlesome and inept. I mean, I can't confirm this, but I've heard that one of the main reasons that Steve Sarkisian got that job is because he was going to make the players stand and sing the Eyes of Texas song, the song that got so much controversy, for having like racist. I mean, that's who's running the show at Texas. And if that's who's pulling your strings and pulling your money, if you're a kid and you know that from back channels in Texas, is that where you want to go play? Probably not, especially when A&M now has facilities that are just as nice and probably just as close to where you are at home if you are indeed from Texas. And I mean, just look at the past 10 years of Texas. There's no stability there. I mean, they took in Charlie Strong, who was supposed to be a promising coach, ran him out. They then took in the next most promising guy, Tom Herman. They've now run him out. And now the promising guys don't even want to go there. And now they're doing a retread with Steve Sarkisian. Last time we saw him as a head coach, he had to walk off the field because he was coming to work drunk.
Yeah, I remember that. Now, Oklahoma and Texas going to SEC, and now the Cincinnati and Houston and Central Florida is going to the Little 12 because that's what I'm calling it now. The Little
Fair
12.
enough.
How is the Little 12 going to survive? Because they're pretty good, but you lose your top dogs, and they still want to. I thought they're going to dissolve into the Pac-12, but they want to keep going. How's that going to work?
Well, I mean, getting those 4 schools certainly is a start. I mean, really, the thread's all been laid bare. This is about money right now. And if you want money, UCF, the Big 12 now has a team in Florida. You can pull Florida TV dollars. Cincinnati, you now have Ohio TV dollars you can pull from. I mean, those 2 states alone, I think, make up for what you lose, at least in Oklahoma, as far as the TV money goes.
Absolutely.
BYU, I mean, Utah, I mean, you're going to get viewers there, and you already have people in Houston. I think financially speaking, it does make up some ground. But as far as you competing for a playoff spot, I mean, that doesn't really help you. And
as far as marketing, the only problem is as far as marketing, you have good teams going in. They're good teams you name. The problem is Oklahoma and Texas or Oklahoma and Texas. And now they're going to go to the SEC, which makes the SEC even larger than life than it is. And now you're getting those teams, but it's not – I can't wait to watch those teams play on TV like you're going to see Oklahoma and Texas and Alabama and LSU and all those monster matchups now.
It's so weird. I sound like such an SEC purist here. It's going to take a long time for me to get used to seeing Oklahoma play Alabama on, at the 3:30 game. It feels weird, man. It really does.
But you know what? Know what this helps though? Texas is going to be a mess. It's going to help Oklahoma because Oklahoma is going to start to get the physical SEC dudes on defense that they've lacked because of now they're in the SEC. Because Lincoln Riley has always had that good offense, but now they're going to transition from finesse to physical, and I think that could really help Oklahoma. I don't trust Texas, like you said. I know that, but Oklahoma, I think it does enhance. Like Missouri's a lot better that they're in the SEC now.
I think that's such an underrated aspect to look at because when you go to the SEC, your recruiting base now opens up, specifically into states like Georgia and Florida and Alabama. Kids, or at least those are places Oklahoma probably isn't going into very often. They probably get a majority of their recruits from Texas, obviously. But if you can tell kids who live in Florida and Georgia, hey, you can come play over here with Lincoln Riley, score 1,000 points a game, and still play in the SEC, that's a potential game changer if you're Oklahoma.
That's the difference. Finally, before I let you go, what do you think of Ohio State? I don't like their defense. Their offense is fantastic with speed and the receivers and everything. But it's just like, it seems like when they get in the playoffs every year and they run it, because they beat up on the Big Ten. Then when they're not battle tested, they run to an SEC team or a really good Clemson that blew Clemson out. But usually Clemson's gotten their number. When they run to a team equally with their speed, they tend to kind of get beat up a little bit in those big games.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I will say, this is a little bit of a hot take for me. I think Minnesota's good.
Minnesota's well coached, very well coached.
I think Minnesota's going to do very well this year. So I think that game said more about Minnesota
It
than Ohio
does.
State. I do think there's concerns about Ohio State's defense, but I mean, there's a good chance they just kind of look like Oklahoma this year, where they're going to outscore everybody because no one is going to be able to keep up with the weapons they have on offense, especially not in the Big Ten. Now, granted, when you get to the playoffs, it's a different story.
Yes.
But I don't think anyone in their conference is going to get in their way.
No. Listen, you're in the dark, but you are beyond good. You are on an MVP Heisman level, so I appreciate what you did in the car on short notice. Thank you very much. It's Chris Stanley, the great Chris Stanley, doing work like he does all the time.